Kelsey Barrett was a typical Christian woman living in rural Colorado.
Patrick Frazee is a cowboy.
Kelsey and Patrick met online on a dating site.
And that is when they became engaged.
Thanksgiving Day in 2018, Kelsey Barrett was getting a few extra things ready for a Thanksgiving dinner.
We see the surveillance video of Kelsey.
But she doesn't run off, and someone knows where she's at.
Just going to the bathroom when he notices something in the corner of his eye, and it's this little speck of red. And he says, wait a minute, is that blood? Woodland Park is kind of like a little slice of Texas just west of Colorado Springs.
It's a quaint, really beautiful mountain town.
Everyone knows their neighbors. They know who they're seeing at the grocery store every day.
Woodland Park and Cripple Creek are very interesting places.
Cripple Creek is an old mining town that goes back to the gold rush back in the late 1800s.
It's just a sleepy ranch town in the mountains.
I think it's fair to say Kelsey Barrett is one of the biggest things that has happened in Cripple Creek in a long time.
Kelsey Barrett was a unique woman. She was a woman that a lot of people would like their daughter, their sister, their mothers to aspire to be.
A driven, intelligent, loving, giving mother, family friend, someone that everyone could count on.
Kelsey was just a strong young woman. She was very well respected.
A typical Christian woman.
Faith was very important to Kelsey.
She had a passion for aviation. She was a flight instructor down in Pueblo.
From an early age, aspired to be a pilot. She wanted to be a crop duster. Her dad had been involved in a family business that grew alfalfa. Kelsey went to Big Bend Community College where she got her private pilot's license and eventually became an instructor.
Fantastic pilot, dedicated to the work.
Kelsey Barrett would soon secure a job in Pueblo, Colorado with DOS Aviation.
The responsibility of the pilot instructors at DOS is to train new pilots from the Air Force Academy, but also international pilots. It's one thing to be a pilot instructor, but it's another thing to be a pilot instructor when you haven't been in the military, but you're also a female.
Being a pilot is hard. It's hard to get a job as a pilot. It takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of work. And Kelsey put the work in to be a pilot.
So Kelsey wasn't originally from Colorado.
Kelsey was the oldest of two children to Cheryl and Daryl Barrett. Kelsey grew up in Moses Lake, Washington.
What brought Kelsey to Colorado was meeting Patrick Frazee.
Patrick Frazee? The best way to describe Patrick Frazee is a cowboy.
He's just a good old boy living in Teller County. He was very soft-spoken.
His job was ferrying moving horses. He also did horseshoeing, and he spoke like a cowboy.
Clint Klein became friends with Patrick Frazee while working at the 2 Mile High Club, which cares for donkeys in Cripple Creek.
You got ready for a hoof trimming yourself. About 8 years ago, he ended up becoming the farrier for the donkey herd here in Cripple Creek, and that's how I got to know him.
He's 33 years old. He lives in Teller County up on a ranch with his mom. It's a very large property.
Patrick he's a real nice guy. He was very dedicated to his work.
Kelsey and Patrick met on an online dating app, online service.
That was around April of 2016. They had a very short, if you will, internet relationship.
She ends up eventually making the step that she's going to move out to Colorado to be with Patrick.
It was almost a whirlwind romance.
Late April of 2016 to May. Patrick spent a week or so out in Washington with Kelsey, And shortly after that meeting, Kelsey left her job and moved out to Colorado with Patrick.
The only time I ever met Kelsey, she came out and actually spent an afternoon a few years back, so I got to talk to her a little bit. And at that point, she wasn't pregnant. Then the next time Patrick was out, we found out that she was pregnant.
They had a child together. They were engaged to be married.
They had been engaged for a lengthy amount of time.
She loved being a mom. We heard from her coworkers how much she enjoyed her job, and she was juggling being a new mom with being a pilot.
She was a young mother, but she was fiercely devoted to her daughter, always making sure that she had the best, spent the time with her that she could, and just loved her daughter.
It was no small task to commute to this airport. Was some distance away. She had a child that she was caring for and a relationship she was trying to develop even further, even though they had a child and were not married.
Though Patrick and Kelsey were engaged and raising a 1-year-old daughter, the couple did not live together.
She's living in a townhome in Woodland Park. He's out on his cattle ranch with his mom up in Teller County, but they're not living together.
They had been together now since essentially April 2016. It was my understanding that Patrick shared the same dream of Patrick and Kelsey would establish a life together, a family together, a ranching type family, similar to what Kelsey had growing up.
According to friends, Patrick was also a devoted father, often bringing their 1-year-old daughter with him to work on the ranch.
He was a real good dad. He had a car seat that he kept her in to where he could bundle her up if it got cold. He would have her to where she was never out of his eyesight much. And he took real good care of her, and he was a pretty good dad as far as I'm concerned. He was a great dad.
This story begins on Thanksgiving Day, 2018.
Kelsey Barrett was getting a few extra things ready for a Thanksgiving dinner.
She had talked to her mom that morning, got a recipe for a bread dip that she was going to make. She was at Safeway.
Kelsey Barrett is seen on surveillance video walking into a Safeway grocery store with her 14-month-old daughter.
Kelsey Barrett walks into the grocery store and she's got a car seat with her daughter with her.
They're going to pick up sweet potatoes so she can make Patrick Frazie's favorite meal.
You can see her shopping at Safeway, and you can see her checking out. She bought the ingredients. She bought a poinsettia. Kelsey just vanishes off the face of the earth, and that just doesn't happen.
Here we are in the beautiful Rocky Mountains of Colorado. You've got a cowboy. You've got a very attractive woman who has a child between them.
You have a missing person that just vanishes. That's how this whole case starts.
I will never forget when we first learned there was this mom missing in Woodland Park. She was last seen on surveillance video on Thanksgiving Day with her 1-year-old daughter.
It was the last time Kelsey Barrett was seen in public.
And we're all asking, what mom goes missing and just vanishes without taking their 1-year-old daughter? Kelsey and her mom were really close. They talked often.
So when Cheryl hasn't heard from Kelsey in about a week, she's getting concerned.
She's starting to get worried. She's reaching out to Patrick Frazie.
And it's at this time that Cheryl hears for the first time from Patrick that Kelsey and Patrick, according to Patrick, had split up the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
So when Cheryl learned from her conversation with Patrick on December 2nd that they had ended the relationship, Cheryl was taken back by that.
She's really rather shocked. Cheryl had talked to Kelsey on Thanksgiving. None of this had been brought up in that conversation.
Patrick says that he picked up the baby, that he and Kelsey met in the alley of Kelsey's home to make the exchange of their daughter, and that after that he left and hadn't seen Kelsey since.
And he mentioned that he gave a few items to Kelsey the last time that he had seen her, including a gun and a set of keys as well.
Even though they weren't going to be together as a couple anymore, they were still going to share parental responsibilities 50-50. He had told Cheryl that he had not spoken with Kelsey since Sunday, the 26th of November, and that he had no idea where she was.
Their relationship was over. Maybe she was just vanishing, that she wanted to get out of town. She was done with this. She had just vanished on her own.
Cheryl had asked Patrick to go by Kelsey's house and check on her, and then subsequently ended the conversation. In turn, Cheryl called the Woodland Park Police Department to request a welfare check on Kelsey.
So when Woodland Park Police Department is contacted by Cheryl, they go to her condo in Woodland Park to see if she comes to the door.
The blinds were closed, they knocked on the windows, they knocked on the door, got no answer.
Nothing is really amiss when they go to her condo initially. Both of her cars are still there.
They saw no signs of a struggle, no signs of any foul play.
There's even some baked goods sitting on the counter.
A particular pan that was on the stove that had cinnamon rolls. It wasn't covered up.
They go through the place, they go upstairs, they're looking around. They don't find anything out of sorts.
They aren't able to find Kelsey's keys, Kelsey's cell phone, or her purse. So it does kind of imply potentially that she may have left.
We quickly learned from our conversations with Cheryl that Kelsey's disappearance was completely out of character. It was not something that Kelsey had ever done before.
December 2nd, Cheryl Barrett calls Woodland Park Police to report her daughter, 29-year-old Kelsey Barrett, missing. Police then call 32-year-old Patrick Frazee.
Patrick Frazee tells police not a whole lot of information, that their relationship was over, that he saw her on Thanksgiving Day. He went to her house in Woodland Park, picked up their daughter, and left.
He had not physically seen Kelsey since Thanksgiving, but had been in communication with her by phone.
After Patrick takes the baby, we know that he then goes to Walmart. He describes going to the ATM, and then he goes to have Thanksgiving dinner with his family.
Patrick tells police that the last text he received from Kelsey was,
"Do you really love me?"
Patrick responds, "Why would I bend over backwards and stand behind you through everything if I didn't? So, to answer your question, yes, I do."
The last message that was recorded from Kelsey's phone was in a place called Gooding, Idaho, where it had pinged off a cell phone tower.
800 miles away from Woodland Park, where Kelsey Barrett was last seen in this Safeway surveillance footage Thanksgiving Day.
Modern police work is now tracking down videos in a case. Modern police work is getting these cell towers. And I'll tell you, all those are extremely time-consuming at all levels.
Police discover Kelsey Barrett is captured on another surveillance video after she was last seen at Safeway.
One of Kelsey's neighbors had surveillance footage too. They had a surveillance camera. The camera had been up for personal reasons. That surveillance camera, one of them, actually picked up Kelsey's front door.
What you also see, Patrick with Kelsey, with the baby, going into Kelsey's condo. You see the poinsettia in Kelsey's hand as they're going into that condo.
What we were able to learn from that is that Kelsey did enter her home on Thanksgiving with her daughter and Patrick, but we never saw Kelsey leave. The only person that we saw leave was Patrick.
Kelsey's family is about to make a shocking discovery that police's first search of Kelsey's apartment missed.
We are no longer thinking that Kelsey's missing, but that some sort of violent act, foul play is involved in Kelsey's disappearance. So it changes the investigation dramatically.
"29-year-old Kelsey Barrett is seen on surveillance video shopping at Safeway on Thanksgiving Day. The father of their child, Patrick Frazee, says he last saw Kelsey 1 hour later at her apartment when he picked up their 1-year-old daughter. And as Kelsey's trail goes cold, her family makes a horrifying discovery.
Kelsey's mom, Cheryl, was very concerned and knew something was wrong. She came out to Colorado with Kelsey's brother to look for Kelsey.
When Kelsey's family got into the townhouse, they started looking around for anything the police might have missed.
There is a weird film on lots of items in Kelsey's condo, like on the TV, on the appliances. It was odd to Cheryl, and she noted it.
Cheryl had talked about how there was a particular floor mat in the bathroom that she saw in October that was no longer there.
None of Kelsey's clothes were missing. Her toothbrush was still there. Everything that Kelsey would have taken with her was still there. Makeup, clothes.
I don't think this ever looks like a Thanksgiving where she was planning to leave town. All indications were that she was planning to be with Patrick Frazee on Thanksgiving, so nothing really seemed to add up that she was planning to vanish.
Kelsey's brother woke up one morning and he went to the bathroom and he notices something in the corner of his eye, and it's this little speck of red. And he says, "Wait a minute, is that blood?"
When police searched the bathroom, they were able to find blood and fluid all over that bathroom.
The bathroom basically glowed. We knew at that point that there had been something that occurred in that bathroom, a very significant bloodletting type, or what we believe to be a bloodletting event.
Investigators test the blood for a DNA profile.
They were able to use DNA evidence to link that back to Kelsey Barrett. We also know that they found an unknown male DNA and another unknown female DNA in that bathroom.
After Kelsey Barrett's disappearance, there was very little information given publicly. Woodland Park police kind of held their cards closer to their chest.
We are treating Kelsey's disappearance as a missing persons case at this time. We have not identified anyone as a suspect and are asking the public for any information that might help us find her.
Her mom came out and gave emotional sound at this press conference where she was crying, asking Kelsey to come home.
She's not the kind that runs off. This is completely out of character. Someone knows where she's at. Kelsey, we just want you home. Call us if you can, and we won't quit looking.
And we noticed that Patrick Frazee wasn't there. So we were curious. We wanted to know, where's Patrick at?
Chief, I understand that Patrick was invited today. Why is he not here?
That is a question you'd have to ask him.
Is he being cooperative?
Yes, at this time, yes.
He had made attempts to talk to Patrick, but Patrick invoked his right to counsel and would not talk to us again.
Investigators take a look at the digital forensics here, and they start looking at, phones, emails.
They also use video from a neighbor's surveillance camera to verify Patrick's movement on Thanksgiving Day and confirm that the couple did enter the apartment at 1:23 p.m.
We never saw Kelsey leave. The only person that we saw leave was Patrick.
But police say the same surveillance camera contradicts Patrick's story that he was having Thanksgiving with his family 15 miles away in Florissant at 4:30 p.m.
Between 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Thanksgiving to about 4:30 in the afternoon of Thanksgiving 2018, Patrick is seen on the neighbor's surveillance coming in and out of Kelsey's apartment several times.
After the blood is found in Kelsey's condo, law enforcement obtains a search warrant for Patrick Frazee's phone records. It's at this point that you can start to see that Patrick wasn't honest entirely, really at all, with law enforcement about his movements.
The cell phone data was really key to this investigation. and investigators start noticing that the pings that are coming from Kelsey's phone and from Patrick's phone don't really seem to add up.
What you see in the phone records is that their phones are together.
The majority of the time between Thanksgiving and November 25th, 2018.
It becomes very clear that Patrick has Kelsey's phone, or Patrick has Kelsey.
And then that's when they see the erratic movement heading out west, first towards Grand Junction and then Salt Lake City, before ultimately ending up in Idaho, a little town called Gooding.
They're noticing that he's texting and calling a certain specific number quite a lot in the days after Kelsey Barrett goes missing.
Even though that we found a large amount of blood, we didn't know what happened. There was no signs of any struggle. There was nothing in the home that gave us any idea of what may have happened.
While police lack any evidence to tie Patrick to Kelsey Barrett's disappearance, they are very interested in 2 phone calls he places after leaving her apartment.
Patrick calls at about 4:30 on Thanksgiving afternoon. Calls his mother, and then he calls a number in Idaho. And at this point, we have no idea who that is.
The 208 number began to take on essentially a life of its own.
As police track down the owner of the phone number with the 208 area code, their investigation is about to take a horrifying twist. After mother and flight instructor Kelsey Barrett vanishes without a trace on Thanksgiving Day, investigators suspect foul play, but don't have the evidence to prove it.
It became difficult in many respects to try and piece this together.
Even though that we found a large amount of blood, we didn't have a clue.
When he describes that he hasn't had any contact with Kelsey, what you see in the phone records is that their phones are together. So that became a huge red flag.
But investigators only have one lead to prove Patrick Frazee is lying. An unknown person with an Idaho area code. The last person Frazee calls after leaving Kelsey's apartment.
The 208 cell phone number was eventually identified to and linked to Crystal Lee Kenny from Idaho.
Crystal Lee Kenny was a rodeo queen. She was loved in her community. She was a small town girl.
She's a woman that Patrick Frazee knew. They met at a ranch dance at, I think it was the Teller County Fairgrounds, in fact. And she was just a rodeo queen, and he was just a country boy. They had a little bit of a romance that was happening. It was kind of off and on again.
Crystal was a nurse in Idaho, in Twin Falls, and she had no criminal record.
She's a caregiver. She's a mother herself.
What she did have seemed to be an obsession with Patrick Frazee. She struck up a relationship with him about a dozen years ago, and it was an on-again, off-again relationship.
And it seemed that she was very much so in love with Patrick Frazee and somewhat blinded by that love.
Crystal Kenny had gotten married.
She had 2 children, but then eventually the relationship with her husband at that time eroded. Crystal and Patrick hooked up again. Then Crystal got divorced and began seeing Patrick.
Ultimately, the FBI calls that number and talks to Crystal. They ask her point blank, how do you know Patrick? How do you know Kelsey? And Crystal lies to the FBI.
She initially denied having any knowledge of Kelsey, downplayed her relationship with Patrick, pretty much downplayed the whole thing.
FBI agents confront Crystal's account with cell phone evidence.
We have the cell phone pings showing that you and Patrick Frazee were together in Colorado in the days after Kelsey Barrett went missing.
Crystal Lee Kenny begins to change her story.
Ultimately tells the FBI that she actually had driven out on Thanksgiving weekend to look at a horse, decided not to get the horse, and then drove back to Idaho.
We talked to Crystal and told her that we knew more than she had provided, that we knew that she was lying. Crystal says, I do want to talk to you. There is information essentially that I want to provide, but I need to talk to a lawyer first.
Our office and law enforcement speaks with her attorney, and we agree to have Crystal come to Colorado and provide a full, detailed interview and statement about what happened.
As Crystal Lee Kenny tells investigators what she knows about Kelsey Berth's disappearance, they are horrified.
As these details were coming out, I mean, it was just shocking.
We were not expecting any of that.
Blood all over the floor. I saw blood up the wall.
But even more horrifying than Crystal's description of the crime scene is her account of Kelsey Berth's final moments.
That was just absolutely shocking.
When we got into the interview and Crystal began to tell us what happened to Kelsey, I think everybody viewing and participating in that interview were beyond shocked.
Patrick Frazee had reached out to Crystal with a wild plot.
It was revealed that he had asked Crystal Lee on 3 separate occasions to go and kill Kelsey Berth.
So between August and September 26th is when this whole plan of getting rid of Kelsey began.
He's trying to get his mistress to kill the mother of his child for him.
Patrick obviously knows that Crystal is a nurse by profession. They talk about things, specifically medication that could be used as a cocktail to kill someone.
He says, hey, I've got an idea. Kelsey loves caramel macchiatos. Why don't you slip a little something into her drink? She won't notice it, and then that'll be it.
She actually goes to Starbucks, she gets Kelsey Berth's favorite drink, brings it to her townhome in Woodland Park.
But at the last second, Crystal backs out of the plan to poison Kelsey.
On the second occasion, she was to come by with a pipe.
Crystal hasn't gone through with the plan. He's angry. He tells her, you've got one more chance to do this. Bring a baseball bat with you.
But after driving nearly 12 hours from Idaho to Colorado for the 3rd time,
she doesn't do it. She gets back into the car. She tells Patrick, I can't do this.
the next time Crystal hears from Patrick Frazee is after 4:30 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day.
And essentially tells her, I need you to come down here and clean up this mess. And she gets in the car and she comes down to Colorado with all of her gear and cleans up the crime scene.
Okay, it's 11:15, again on the 21st, December 2018. We're inside Kelsey's apartment with Crystal. Her attorney's with us. When you came in, what did you see?
When I first walked in, I saw blood all over the floor. I saw blood up the wall. Saw blood on this wall.
Prosecutors were able to take the jury right into Kelsey Barrett's residence through a videotape in which Crystal Lee took them through that townhome and showed them everything that she had seen at the time that she was in there to clean up after the murder.
She's wearing an FBI outfit to kind of disguise her.
Strangely, Crystal Lee was dressed in a Colorado Bureau of Investigation protective suit. So it almost looked like she was a law enforcement officer, which may have even added to her credibility. But she pointed out, point by point, everything that she saw.
And you can see where she's pointing out where she cleaned up blood.
It was the spray of from here all the way. I had to clean up underneath here, then it was all down here.
She points them to where she left blood, she says deliberately, in the house so that investigators could find it.
In the interview, you told us that you had left blood spots. Can you show me where you left those?
I know that I didn't get there. I don't know that I got some of this underneath here because I didn't move the chairs to get it.
She describes and points out everything. It was just a tremendous amount of information that she was providing.
There was a lot of blood. So they're on the floor, all over the floor. There was blood on the front of the dishwasher. There was blood on the front of the stove. There was, that cinnamon roll pan had blood on the tinfoil on top of it.
Blood was splattered all over the walls. It was a terrible scene.
There's blood on the floor. There's blood on the fireplace. There's blood on a baby gate.
There's blood on the TV. There was blood on the chairs. There's blood on this chair. There's blood on the table. There's blood on the Hobby Lobby bag that was sitting there.
She describes it taking hours for her to clean all of that up. She describes taking some items from Kelsey's condo with her that she couldn't clean up.
I started picking up things that were blood splattered that I would have a hard time getting blood out of.
But even more horrifying is Crystal's description of how she says Patrick killed Kelsey.
According to Crystal, Patrick told her that they were playing a game, smell or describe the scent of a candle. Patrick, according to Crystal, had placed a sweater around Kelsey's eyes, kind of blindfolded her, and was telling her to guess the scent of the candle.
While she was playing this game, that Frazee took out a baseball bat and, quote, swung away, killing her.
This all occurred in the living room of Kelsey's home while their daughter was in the back office in a bouncy type chair.
Kelsey is blindfolded and she's being beaten to death by her fiance, the man that she thinks is in love with her, and all the while their daughter is in the same house while this is happening.
Crystal Lee Kenny also tells investigators that Frazee tells her what Barrett's final words were, and she is telling Patrick to please stop, to please stop. And he doesn't stop. He brutally murders her.
After Crystal scrubs down the crime scene,
and then drives to Sonic near Kelsey's home, where she buys lunch for Patrick and Patrick's daughter.
They then retrieve Kelsey's remains, which have been stored in a black tote in a barn Patrick has access to.
The container was a black plastic tote that was about this tall and about that wide.
We also see in surveillance video at the Conoco gas station. And in that video, you can see Frazee filling up gas containers.
They bring it back to Patrick's property and they burn Kelsey's remains on a fire.
And this is where the burn occurred.
And you could see a distinct, it almost looked like asphalt type of burn scar right where Crystal said it would be.
Crystal Lee had taken, at Patrick's direction, Kelsey's phone and transported it back to Idaho, sending messages along the way indicating that she was traveling. The last message that was recorded from Kelsey's phone was in a place called Gooding, Idaho.
Today we arrested Patrick Frazee on charges of first-degree murder of Kelsey Barrett. As you can tell from the arrest, sadly, we do not believe Kelsey is still alive.
As prosecutors build their case against Patrick Frazee without recovering Kelsey's body,
Told a few people before he killed her, if there's no body, there's no crime. He thought that would be the way to get away with it.
they offer Crystal Lee Kenny a sweetheart plea deal in exchange for her testimony against Patrick Frazee.
They know they made a deal with the devil, but they didn't have a case without Crystal Lee Kenny.
But prosecutors are stunned when an unexpected witness steps forward and drops a bombshell in court.
I think it's fair to say that the Kelsey Barrett trial and Patrick Frazee being on trial for her murder is one of the biggest things that has happened in Cripple Creek in a long time.
32-year-old Patrick Frazee is charged with the murder of his fiancée and mother of his 1-year-old daughter after his mistress admits her role in helping to clean up a gruesome crime scene.
There was a lot of blood.
And how she helped Patrick dispose of Kelsey's body.
This is where the burn occurred.
In the end, there's only one person who murdered Kelsey. Our target was going to be Patrick Frazee. So then, in order to be able to charge him, we had to make a deal with the devil.
I don't know of a guy anywhere that would have thought about wanting to blindfold somebody and light the candles and get them to smell them and try and come up with what the scent was. That's something that a woman would come up with.
Without Crystal telling us what happened, that we would have ever even been able to charge Patrick with Kelsey's murder. There was just so much information that Crystal was able to give us that we didn't have.
Crystal Lee Kenny spent 2 days on the stand testifying against Patrick Frazee. But prosecutors say their case didn't rest on her testimony alone. They had the video to back her story up.
As you go right down the line in this case, each piece of video is another nail in his coffin because it shows everything Crystal Lee is saying is absolutely the truth.
But even prosecutors are shocked when their star witness gets upstaged.
The bombshell in this trial came when an inmate took the stand on one of the last days of the trial, and he laid out shocking details. I mean, everyone's jaw in that courtroom was on the floor. There were audible gasps in the courtroom.
An inmate that was housed with Patrick at the Teller County Jail came forward and said Patrick tried to elicit me to kill witnesses in this case, and he wrote it out on napkins.
You're like, okay, how does this guy know these specific people that aren't even in the state, that have never been in the news, and locations of where they live, some real fine details?
My jaw dropped at that point. I think a lot of people in the courtroom said, well, if there was any doubt now about Patrick Frazee's guilt, I think this might be, excuse the expression, the nail in the coffin.
After 10 days of testimony against Patrick Frazee, the prosecution rests their case, and Frazee's defense attorneys don't call a single witness.
Patrick Frazee never even said a word. To a certain point, there were many months that people had no idea what Patrick Frazee even sounded like.
It took jurors just 3.5 hours to return a verdict.
Patrick Frazee showed no emotion when the verdict was read. When he was told he was going to spend the rest of his life behind bars, nothing. When the judge told him he was vicious and that he deserved the maximum sentence, no emotion from Patrick Frazee.
Despite a guilty verdict, Clint Klein still believes his friend is innocent.
Hello, Miss Curious. I mean, they've never found a body, so there's one scenario that there's a chance she's still alive just someplace else. There's the other scenario that Crystal killed her if she is in fact dead. Do I think that Patrick did it? No. Do I think that it's possible that somebody else did it? Yes.
Silent throughout Kelsey Barrett's disappearance, convicted murderer Patrick Frazee is finally speaking out from behind bars. After Kelsey Barrett vanishes on Thanksgiving Day, Patrick Frazee is convicted for her murder and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And for the first time, he speaks out.
This was a letter I received from Patrick Frazee. It's from Colorado Department of Corrections with his name, his prisoner number, and the Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility on it. And he says, let me start by telling you I did not kill Kelsey! Exclamation point. He goes on to say, I need answers too. I want to know where she is. I want my daughter to know the truth. And most of all, I want my daughter to know I did not kill her mother. He says Dan May, the prosecutor, and the media took this story from Crystal and ran with it. The facts didn't line up with the story she told. I can go on for hours showing you that these things didn't live up.
Prosecutors disagree, saying Crystal Lee Kenny provided a mountain of evidence.
Not only did she give us the evidence, she also gave us the story.
Crystal Lee Kenny was initially sentenced to 3 years in prison, the maximum sentence for tampering with evidence, in exchange for her testimony against Patrick Frazee.
He's spending the rest of his life in prison, and that is justice as we can get it. We can't bring her back, and that would be the true justice. Was this justice for Crystal Lee Kenny? Absolutely not. She deserves at least 20 years in prison, probably.
I'll never understand why Crystal did what she did, and it's not my job. And my feelings about Crystal, about Patrick, is irrelevant. This was not about anything but Kelsey, because Kelsey was just a tremendous human being that this world is going to miss.